Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our fourth session of our weekly webinar series. Today we'll continue the topic you have all been waiting for, and that is the social circumplex from our C+8 app suite. We dedicate an entire session to each app for a better understanding of our technology and how it can be used. According to our agenda, we'll cover both the social circumplex presentation and demo and the Q&A session. Before starting, I'd like to thank you all for your interest in the Edain project and for the engagement on our social media accounts. We've received many interesting questions from our community, and we can't wait to cover them at the end of this session. The wait is over. I would like to welcome our speaker for today, Dr. Hardy Schloer, the creator of C+8 technology. Hello, Hardy, and welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me once again at our fourth webinar. And I hope will be useful to you, and let's get right into it.
Now, Hardy, please tell us more about what the social circumplex represents, what is it created for, and how can people use it?
Okay, wonderful, great question once again. Today we talk about the circumplex. In this particular case, the social circumplex, which we chose also to use for our examples and for our demos that we have on the website. In the future, when there will be hundreds of applications, there will also be, of course, other circumplexes. Today we talk about the social circumplex, and we will talk about what you can expect and why that is an important tool strategy, because what it is, it's qualitative research. Last time we talked about associative research. Today we talk about qualitative research, a little bit different. So, of course, last time we also talked about the panel. We talked about how the C+8 search panel on the left side actually serves you to create real knowledge. And it basically requires you to be an active partner in that application by working with that panel, by defining what really matters to you, by defining a knowledge object that we want to look at and investigate. Today, here on this, just like we did last time, we want to do again climate change. And for that, we did have as group and organization the United Nations, and we put in as events global warming and climate change. And we want to understand how that does in a social context. How do people feel about it? And for that, we go here to this pretty looking wheel, and it has all these fields, and it has all of these elements. First thing I want to tell you is what you will see right away after you press the Analyze button. You will see these bubbles occurring. These are what we call energy fields, social energy fields, and you can click on them, and then they will open and they will show you what is inside these bubbles. It will give you the content. And these have landed in different fields. Here there's one bubble, for example, in the fear field, or there are several in conflict, action, and escalation, and power, and frustration, and motivation. You see, the left side of this circumplex is hot. The other side is green, is cool. And that is exactly what we want to show you here. The cool side is when people think about stuff, when they think before they act. The red one is when they act before they think. So you will find, for example, because this is about climate change, you will find activists on both sides. You will find activists that are overreacting, that are treating a activist matter in a religious way. And then you see scientists that are a little bit more detached and they take all in consideration. They're cooler about it. And you will find mostly them on the cool field, where we have agreement and ideals and debate and hope. And also, of course, anxiety and these kind of elements. When you look on top, you actually see all of the different fields from the Circumplex. They are distributed, and you can actually see in a quantitative way how these qualities distribute. So here you have actually a combination between quality and quantity. And once you have that, you can, just like we did last time with the QSearch, here you can do forensic analysis. You, for example, see that escalation on one side is a 4.79 with 39%. You have hope with 591. That is 72.52 hope. Hope means hope that our worst scenarios will not come true. Well, hope obviously will not solve climate change. So as long as we have this very high number in hope, we actually do know by using this Circumplex that the communication with people is insufficient at this point. It hasn't been enough yet to make that work. Now, hope is very close to the power field. It's actually overlapping. And we have, in fact, we have in power, we have also quite a higher percentage. So what we see here very clear is that this hope is very powerful, very strong. And this is a beautiful thing about the Circumplex, is that its positioning of all of these elements gives us a way what wording was used in order to express. Now, clearly, the C+8 panel captures out of this huge pool of documents that we are having, which are news all the way to conspiracy websites and newsletters and whatever have you. But it's the full representation of the human race talking about this subject. And so we capture actually where it is. There is more to it. When you go to the right side or to the bottom and you look at what we call the thermometers, we measure inside that language, we measure, for example, time elements. What is this really talking about? The present, the past, the continuous, the future, or positive or negative? Well, there is a very high component of hope, as you saw before, and when we look at the tone is very positive. So if I overlay this, so there is a very positive hope. We are not making a lot of progress when we want to communicate climate change, because people are still living in the hopeful feeling that we somehow will solve it. So then we have, on the energy, we have weak, moderate, strong. The language is very strong. That's actually quite useful because we need that punch, in order to make the issue worked. But then here we have a very high component of non-factual on the thermometer. Not very useful. So then, when we look at the overall angle, that's at 114 degrees. That means it's pointing right at hope and power. That is the alignment that we also see on the top. And when we look at hot action versus cool action, it's 20.54% to 79.46%. So we have a very, very good understanding what the feeling about the subjects are. And then, of course, all we have to do is click on the various bubbles in the various fields to understand the issues, understand what it is that people are actually thinking about. Now, I talked earlier about that there will be in the future other circumplexes. For example, there will be circumplexes that will be spread out incident. Blue incidents, red incidents, orange incidents, yellow incidents, these are also qualities. And we will be able to capture them in the same way, just we apply our linguistics in a different way, in a different approach. So the circumplex is something that will always give us a spread of qualities over an issue expressed through language. And that is basically the circumplex application. And again, you need to remember that the C+8 panel is what lets you define any kind of thing that you want to know, whether you want to research global warming or breast cancer or the US elections or electric cars or any interests, including Mickey Mouse. You can do it with the social circumplex, as you can do it with all other tools, of course, in C+8.
Wonderful, Hardy. That sounds amazing. I have another question regarding the app and its results. All those data points, I assume, are filled with information. How can I access all that information? How can I access the article supporting the results?
Okay, very easy, good question. So let's say we want to go and we see here action, and there is this bubble here. We click on that bubble. It now pulls up the information. And what we see is on the left side of that window, all the sources. And on the right side, the underlying information of that particular piece of that particular document. And so we can go bubble by bubble by bubble and find out what it is. So let's say we go to one of the bigger bubbles where we have more content. Let's go to this really big one, which has some 540 returns. And the nice thing here is we have now a lot of different sources. And what we can do is we can, first of all, deselect all of them and then apply the filter. Then we have no more news on the right side. And now we can, bit by bit, go and see who is saying what that pertains to this particular bubble. This is very useful. So obviously, if you have some small country's newsletter from somewhere, in Indonesia, they treat perhaps information slightly different than when you go into a highly industrialized country like the United States and you use some of their sources. You will be able to compare what they say, how they contradict each other, how they have different opinions, but all running in the same area of the circumplex, within the same energy bubble of the circumplex. So this is absolutely useful in order to really transparently understand an issue. Not just be served something and then believe that that is all there is. Now imagine you just using a traditional search engine and you put in climate change. What will you get served first? CNN, latest headlines, BBC, latest headlines. Well, the world isn't just CNN and BBC. The world doesn't complete with the United States and England only, although they are very important factors. But there is more to it. There is all of Europe, there's all of Africa, there is Asia, there is China, there is Russia, and so on. And everywhere subjects are being viewed differently. So unless you are willing to gain a more transparent picture about what the world is thinking and what the world is doing and how the world is reacting to the things that matter to you because you searched for them, it is not possible to have a complete view. You need to see all there is, and you need to be able to filter it in the way that it makes sense to you.
How does the app actually place the points on the Circumplex? If we have 10 articles about UN climate change, debating the same problem, which is the climate crisis, how does it distribute each result on the Circumplex, be it on the hope section, motivation, or power, for example? Can you tell us how that works?
This is a very good question. The result of this is perhaps one of the largest NLP projects that have been done by any private enterprise anywhere in the world. This is the result of nearly 4.5 years of validating every single word in the English language to validate how that word is applied within certain frames of reference and where on the Circumplex it exactly has its coordinate with respect to how it's applied. We had over 50 people that for a time frame of about 4.5 years did nothing but language validation in order to now today have this library. And this library is validated over and over and over again so that it very accurately scores every single time, and every single time scores the same way, which is even more important than to be right, is to be consistent, so that every time it scores exactly at the same place. That way we achieve a distribution that later when we take the data as an output to use in machine learning, for example, it is very consistent and allows machine learning tools to make predictions based on the output of the Circumplex that are very, very accurate.
Can you explain to a teenager how this tool could help them in their curiosity? Because you know teenagers are more curious and they tend to stay on the internet way more. How can this app affect a teenager in a positive way, and how could it affect them negatively if they wouldn't use this kind of tool?
As I said in my last webinar, the panel, the C+8 panel, is the magic tool that will actually draw a person into the process to define what they really want to know. When you compare our tools with just regular search engines, you will find out that using our tools involves you much more. There's an interesting study, I mentioned this in my last webinar, there's an interesting study by Professor Norbert Spitzer from Germany. He gave a very famous talk which he calls digital dementia, and he says that actually people that are using computers and tools just like normal search engines are actually becoming dumber. They are not getting smarter. Because they being entertained by information They are not actually working with the information. They're actually not involved in the information creation, in the knowledge creation. The C+8 panel draws, whether it's a teenager, an old person, a business person, it doesn't matter. Everybody, it draws them in to stop for a moment and think about, how do I take these 8 cardinal features and define exactly what it is I want to know. The interesting thing is, everything on this planet can be defined with these 8 features that are in the C+8 panel. There's nothing you could bring. I do this with my students often. I say to them, I give you $1 million. If you can bring me anything in this universe I could not describe with these 8 fields in the C+8 panel. No one ever earned that million, because no one can ever find anything that cannot be defined that way. But the beautiful thing about the teenager is the teenager is inspired. Now, there is a very interesting thing in education, and that is that classic education versus, for example, Montessori schools. Why are people that have gone through Montessori education are so much smarter, so much advanced than those that go through classic education? It is because they are led by their curiosity through the subjects that they want to investigate. They are not being told, you now must learn every battle that occurred in the 18th century in mid-Europe. If you actually really want to learn about how a laser works, or how a particular medical procedure works. Now, with our tools, you can do exactly that. You can wander from field to field. You are not being captured into one area. You can move across areas without walls, without containers, without silos. You are free, but involved. You stay involved in what you want to know. And this is what actually will make a teenager smart.
I understand you are currently recording a more in-detailed podcast on the subject, but can you briefly tell us, taking into account we have spoken about teenagers and their education, what do you believe is the difference between education and knowledge, if there is any, and why should we care?
Well, education is something that hopefully leads to knowledge. The problem with education often is that it is not based on how a person creates knowledge, but how a person memorizes facts. Memorizing facts is absolutely not useful. It is not knowledge. But to understand how things connect through causality, what causes, what affects, what is in between, that is knowledge. And that is only the result of good education. And we hope that C+8 and the tools of C+8, that they are not only tools that actually give you the right information you need in the right moment for a business or for a political decision or whatever, but most importantly also for those that educate. And education should never change. You should, when you're 90 years old, you should still educate you on things, because as long as you keep that sharp, you enjoy life. And by using C+8 tools, you actually can actively educate yourself and actively keep your brain going on all the way until your last day of your life.
Thank you, Hardy. The first section of today's session is over.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.
More information about the apps can be found in our last webinar and our future ones, as we plan on covering them all week by week. But don't go anywhere, because we are going to the Q&A session. I see a lot of good questions in our social media comments section, therefore I would like to welcome our project manager Chris Edwards to address them. Hi, Chris, and welcome.
Good evening, world, and welcome back to week number 4's webinar with Dr. Hardy Schloer. This week's focus is on the C+8 Knowledge Apps introduction with a special feature on the social circumplex. Now, Hardy, we've just concluded the webinar, and it's our time now, of course, for question and answers. And we have drawn, as we do every week, excuse me, a number of questions from our Twitter feed. And we will now go ahead and start with those questions. So Hardy, first question from guest Man Mathilde is the following. How can I study in detail each app? How to use each feature, how to interpret each result, what connections can be made? Is there a user manual, a course, a training video available? If not, do you plan to distribute such materials? And if yes, when? Thank you.
All right, good question. In fact, it gets much better than that. Not only will there be a user manual, we will actually have a C+8 Academy. And in that academy, you can take courses. You don't have to actually show it up in a classroom. These will be done over video conferencing, such as this. And we will teach you step by step in how to use these tools and how to do, in this case, qualitative research. In fact, when you do these courses, you can get certified, because this is quite important, because you may want to use these tools in a business setting, and you may want to be able to do some very, very deep research, for example, on product acceptance, brand acceptance, on election predictions, on all of these kind of things. And that's very good that you can actually show that you have learned how to use very, very high level tools, and that you can operate them, you can interpret them, and you can use them in an actual active research session. But of course, also it will be helping you to use them on a day-to-day use when you use them for your personal needs.
Fantastic. And yes, bear in mind, those people interested, we will be communicating the bringing online of these tutorials. So stay posted in the Edain channels, and you'll hear about these things from us. Hardy, question number 2.
Chris, before you move on, let me just add this.
Sure.
Everyone needs to understand that there is one common theme, one common tool, one common element that goes through all of our tools. And that is the search panel on the left side of every application, the C+8 C+8 search panel, where you define your knowledge object. What is it that you really, really, really want to know? And you can describe that by box that in through events, through participating people, groups, concepts, objects, events, timelines, and whatever have you, to really define this perfect knowledge sweet spot that you are after. And then when you describe that, then you transpose it into the tool. Any tool gives you different type of outputs, and you can watch your question. You can watch your piece of knowledge that you want in that context. And the nice thing about this is it's interactive knowledge. You are not just looking like a search engine, that entertains you to some degree. No, you are drawn into working with the tool to define what it is that you really want to know. And that, once you have learned that on one app, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, or associative, or just raw search, once you understand the little C+8 panel, and we're going to put a lot of effort there in explaining how to use that, you will be able to use anything you want. Back to you, Chris.
Super, thanks, Hardy. Question number 2 is from a gentleman by the name of Mohammed Katich. Mr. Katich would like to know, Hardy, what is the link between Edain and NLP/Knowledge Vault?
Interestingly enough, I have a friend who's exactly the same name.
I know you
Interesting
do.
that there are more than one in this world. So, Mr. Katich, very simple. NLP is natural language processing, okay? And remember what Genesis says. Genesis, the first book of almost every religion that is practiced in the world, except for a few. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And the Word is, in fact, that encapsulates everything. Remember that everything is described through language, the Word. And when you use language, then language becomes this medium of what I think, what I want to communicate, and to what you think and what you want to communicate. So language is hugely important. And in the context of what we are talking in this webinar today, the Circumplex lets you actually not only factually understand what is said, but how it is said. And that goes towards meaning. Was something said in an angry tone or in a conciliatory tone? Was it questioner, or was it more a questioning meant to be a statement, and so on? You can all read that out of very, very clever NLP tools. And we have spent about 5 years in a massive project with many researchers to really get that right, to really box in the grammar, to really understand what people actually mean and how they are saying it. Not only what they say, but how are they saying it, and so on. So NLP will be a very essential point wherever we use these tools inside the knowledge vault. And needless to say, the entire search algorithms that we are using are accessed through language. They're not accessed through numbers or to symbols or whatever. They're accessed actually through natural language. So therefore, this is quite an important connection. I hope, Mr. Kadic, that I answered your question right and well and satisfactorily. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Hardy. Thanks so much. Question number 3 is from Miroslav Dimitrov. Miroslav's question is, this is a solid project, but why has it taken so long to go public? Everybody obviously commenting, and I think referring to the 5.5 years that we've been in development with C+8 technology and the subsequent rollout now with Edain.
Chris, I see a deeper question in this. Why has it taken so long to go public? Maybe, why has it taken so long anyone is doing this at all? And Miroslav, I can tell you this. Throughout my life, I have always proposed very big things. Cloud computing was one of them back then when all the internet was just static pages. And people would always say, this is too big, this is too big, this is too big. No, this can't be done, this is too big. You're reaching too high, you're reaching too far. This cannot be done. On this particular project, I did not listen to the naysayers, but I never listened to the naysayers in my life, but especially not on this project. And yes, it took a long time to develop these tools, to develop the whole technology around it. These things don't happen overnight. They don't happen quick. You go through cul-de-sacs. You build something, you find it doesn't work. You do it in another way. You run into other problems. You run into what they have in science a lot: false positives, false negatives. Things don't go easy. They don't go smooth because there is no manual that says how to build a C+8 system. You writing that manual as you building that thing for the first time, that's the tough part here. And we did not refrain from going the tough and hard way to build that. Remember that C+8 resolves a whole load of other things that people are trying to build unsuccessfully for many years. And it does them as a side product even. We can go into that in another webinar deeper, but the point is it takes time to build these things. But once you're through, once you're done, when the dust lifts and when you have a clear vision and you see what you created, the results are beautiful. Now the knowledge vault is a very, very big and tall order. Fortunately, we have a fantastic partner with Dell. Dell Dell Technology will really help us to make all of this happening from a computational perspective. We are building the necessary software and tools to make it work. Yes, we've been reaching for the stars, and guess what? We succeeded this time, and we will go on. And now it's time for you to use what we built. Back to you, Chris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hardy, look, this next question is actually a really good question. And this is something that we've pondered ourselves a lot and discussed internally a lot. This is actually the first time I've seen somebody from the outside introduce the issue of the human knowledge gap. Apparently somebody's read the white paper. So big respect. The question from Horacio Gomez Rey is, Hardy, what do you exactly consider the quote human knowledge gap that we portend to eliminate?
No. Well, yeah. This is a very, very important question. I like it. Mm-hmm. Guess what? The human knowledge gap is not getting smaller. It is getting exponentially bigger. Why is that? Because the amount of new knowledge grossly outpaces the ability of present educational systems to move that knowledge into the brains of those that need it the most to make good decisions. There's a second thing that is even more complex, and that is the arrival of AI in mainstream markets. AI, even 2 years ago, was I read a specialized application. Now it's absolutely everywhere, everywhere. I mean, I don't know who isn't using AI anymore these days. Everybody is. So the point here I'm making is that machine generated knowledge and machine generated understanding about complex questions vastly outpaces how humans can come to terms with that. What was needed was actually a tool in which you go from the premises right from the beginning. Okay, I can no longer know, not even in my own field, everything that I need to know. But I can use C+8 and I can use its applications and especially the C+8 search panel to define what I need to know now, this moment, and get that exact thing out of this huge lake of data and huge lake of information and create the knowledge that you need. Remember, for knowledge to happen, you need two things: your inquisitive brain and a huge lake of information that comes together through C+8. So where what you need to know in the lake of information gets interpreted quantitatively, qualitatively, associatively, so that you can apply it in that moment to that problem. And that is the only hope we have, that the knowledge gap between a person that is working on a problem and the huge amount of growing knowledge that exists can be closed and can become parity. That's why C+8 is so important. It actually helps not to close the knowledge gap, but to stay on parity with the knowledge that is growing, so that they can grow with it, not by filling the brain with all the knowledge that exists on this planet. For that, there is the knowledge world. But to fill the brain with that knowledge that is relevant, that moment, for that person on that particular problem. And that is what we are intent to deliver. Chris.
Hey, Hardy, just out of curiosity, how would you say the proliferation of fake news is impacting the human knowledge gap, if at all?
Well, look, fake news is actually a very, very useful thing. Do you know why? Once you identify it as fake, when you understand it qualitatively as fake, when you understand the sources of fake information or disinformation, you have to make here also a distinguishing between accidental errors and real errors. So, or deliberate errors. So, is it disinformation or is it misinformation? Is it something that came about by being not careful enough with the research, by inverting numbers, by hearing something and repeating it without checking it? That is not the vicious part. The vicious part is when an author starts to align facts and to start to align all kinds of things with a story that drives, that makes sense, where they know they're saying things that are not true, or that it is so mixed in with true facts, but taken out of context that it's hard to understand. Once you have users, or once you have people that consume this information, and they learn to understand this is done on sources like this, but never on sources like that, then they begin to understand, well, that's a better source than the other. I give you an easy example. You want to know something about science, and you read a peer-reviewed science article in the American Scientists journal that comes out monthly, and then you read about the same thing in the, well, let's say, the National Enquirer at a Kentucky grocery store at the exit aisle, where housewives, by Boulevard, papers with a lot of colors in the front. Which source would you trust without even having read anything? Which source would you automatically trust more? Obviously, the American Scientist Journal, that is peer-reviewed, that is of the highest standards. And over time, all of these sources, they can be graded in how truthful they are, how reliable they are, how many true or untrue facts they carry, and so on and so forth. All of which can be done to tools that we are developing, filters we are developing, and so on. And once you do that, all hands off. No operator has to say, oh, read this, but not that. We don't need to do that. All we do is we show what the reliability of the sources are by testing the reliability against facts. And that's all it's going to take. So, but then this will give you a good insight of what certain groups want to tell you, or what certain groups want you to believe to be true. That's knowledge. That's good knowledge. So we will not keep fake news out of the knowledge world. We will just make it sure that the user will understand that these are unreliable sources by self-scoring and auto-scoring to the system inside itself. Chris, back to you.
Hardy, we've got some questions from viewers through the YouTube chat from the webinar.
Okay.
And we're gonna hit a couple of these here now. We have a question from Coco from today's webinar, and her question to you is, Hardy, the apps built on top of C+8 of the Knowledge Vault will be available only in English or in other languages as well?
So initially they will be in English. There's a question what you mean. Do you mean the menu bars, or do you mean the analytics of the language itself? So I can tell you, we will immediately after English is well settled, we will have the following target languages right away, and they will be Arabic, Chinese, there will be French, German, Italian, and Spanish. So these will be our main targets. As then the next one will be Portuguese, and with that we literally have covered about 85–90% of what anyone speaks in the world. Yes, there are 57 other languages that eventually we want to attack, but we will leave more time with them. Important will be that we are closing gaps as quickly as possible. Hindi, for example, will be one language, but of course, most people that speak Hindi also speak English. So English obviously will be our main language, and of course the tools internally will process things in English. But we will, as I said, we will expand that. to these languages I just named.
Of course. Question number 2 from the YouTube chat today is from Olayemi Okowole. And Olayemi's question is, statement first, great work, guys. Tried my hands on the current demo, but it does not seem to be giving result when you click on a node. And I presume he must be talking about QSearch. Is this still in the works?
Well, we had, I think today we moved some databases, and that will go on all of next week. So some of the applications will be on and off, even the teasers that we have out there, simply because we are moving a huge amount of stuff into the cloud right now. All stuff that was local is now migrated to the cloud. I would say that in the next 5, 6, 7 days or so, please be forgiving if not everything is working all the time, 100%. But that happens when you grow very fast. After everything is migrated fully into the cloud, we will not have these problems ever again. So if an app doesn't come up right away, it's only for those reasons.
Yeah, we call these growing pains, and we still do have them at this point in time.
Well, they're not even growing pains; they are expected
well,
results.
True.
When you make massive migrations, so this is just the way it goes. And remember, we are not yet up productive. Later, when we are fully up productive, every application will be 100% uptime. That's why we're going to the cloud now, where we have multiple parallels, so nothing is ever going down. This is actually in preparation of never ever to be down in the future.
Great stuff, Hardy. Question 3 is from Tillman Stam, again from the YouTube chat. And his question is, why has Dell not published anything about Edain? And this is a question actually that we've seen just recently sort of start to filter through our Telegram community. And I think perhaps a lot of these people making comments have maybe not seen the launch presentation where Dell spoke at quite some length. But I think you can probably expound a little bit further beyond this. And I would only say to those of you who have the question, check out the launch presentation. It's about an hour and, 10 or 15 minutes, something like that, whereby 3 very key people within the Dell Technologies organization speak on behalf of the project. But Hardy, you can sort of elaborate beyond that to answer Tillman's question.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're working with Dell Technology for the last, 5, 6 years. And our entire backend structure is all done and realized through Dell. And yes, I think if you want to know what is Dell's commitment and how Dell is behind us, that's the thing to watch. Dell actually is and we talked about that literally, that we are going to be working together for the next 30 years to build the knowledge worlds together. In my knowledge, that is perhaps one of the longest term commitments that any group in the industry has ever engaged in or ever done. We actually sit down with the folks from Dell, and that is Mr. Michael Dell on down, and said, we need the right partner for the next 20, 30 years. Are you the right partner here? And they certainly said, yes, we're going to show up. And they are working with us, by the way, every day. They're building great proofs of concept for us right now. They take their own money in their hands to build for us really, really fantastic proofs of concept, so that we then can take them on and use them in our system. If you want to know anything about their commitment, watch the launch event. Maybe we should publish it somehow as a link. that people can go back to and can look at, watch the whole event. And Dell, three people from Dell, from top management, are talking in that event, and yeah, listen to what they have to say. I think it will convince you we got a great partner here. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, sure. And for the record, for those of you participating now or that may watch this later, if you go to the Edain.ai website, on the homepage, there is a link right in the middle of the front page of the homepage that directs you to, or that opens up the launch presentation. You can watch for yourself there what Dell has to say about the partnership. It looks like Mr. Okawole has one more question. And that is, when should we expect the online learning materials for QSearch and C+8? No, this is still a bit of a work in progress, but approximately.
Well, we want to start the courses actually as close to the actual real full open event of the knowledge store. I'm sorry, the knowledge vault, which I believe is on March the 26th or something like that. So probably by February we will start with the academy, and we will give access to live tools at that point for students, registered students, and we will prepare them, for the use. And as I said earlier, students will get certified. This will be also done with projects, homework, all kinds of things that need to be, completed, tests and so on. And once you complete the true, you will receive a certificate, which then turns you loose. The lessons. There will be 21 lessons, and so you could theoretically take every other day a new lesson to complete that. So about a month and a half it will take you to get certified. But then you are a top-notch researcher with C+8 tools. Then actually you can start working with us in our office, because we need lots of testers, researchers, and so on. So back to you, Chris.
And Hardy, if I'm not mistaken, 21 is a lucky number, is it not?
Well, if it's a lucky number to you, then let it be.
Fair enough.
Probably it is, yes.
If you're at the blackjack table and you get a face card and an ace, then it's a lucky number.
Yeah.
Guys, listen, to all of those participating again with us tonight on week 4. We're going to wrap now and call it a night. Please join us again next week, same hour, 5 o'clock UTC, for our 5th webinar, covering the same subject, and where we are going to profile Prisma indicators. So today was the social circumplex. Dr. Schloer will raise the Prisma indicators as the subject matter, and discuss with you how that application works. And of course, be ready for question and answers thereafter. So again, guys, signing off from Edain Technologies. Thank you for joining us week 4. Look forward to seeing you all next week, week 5. Thank you.
Thank you.